everyone. Welcome to Friday's ESPN FC Live. My name is Mark Donaldson. Delighted to be alongside Janusz Mihalik and James Ollie. Shortly, we will be joined by Ryan O'Hanlon as well to preview Chelsea against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup and also to take a look at the 28 signings that have been made in Chelsea since Todd Boehly took over in the summer of 2022. But let's get to this one to preview the weekend's action. I want to start with Arsenal against Newcastle. James, you were in Porto in midweek. That wasn't Arsenal. I don't know what it was. Didn't have a shot on target, but it's two-legged and they'll probably go through. Do you expect them to seamlessly get back into some excellent Premier League form that they've been showing in recent weeks when they face Newcastle in the Saturday night game in the UK?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely see a better display. They were unusually inhibited in Porto. I mean, you mentioned they're not having a shot on target. It was the first time in 2 years they haven't had a shot on target in a game. So it was something of a surprise that they were quite so timid. I think the atmosphere, maybe the occasion, maybe even the sense of history got to them a little bit. Obviously, they haven't been in the Champions League for 7 years, and then there were those 7 years of getting knocked out every single year at the last 16 stage, which obviously Mikel Arteta experienced as a player. And it did feel as though that whole atmosphere around that game and the magnitude of it maybe just got to the players a little bit and just prevented them from playing their best. I think back at home, good atmosphere, Saturday night, 8 o'clock kickoff. I bet the police are loving that timing, by the way. But, it'll be boisterous. They'll want to get behind the team. They'll want to get themselves back on track. They've obviously been in very good form in the Premier League. I suppose the only slight question mark is just about this, another team that might come and defend deep. They're obviously Newcastle perhaps not defending as well as they did earlier in the season, but they can be very compact, very resolute, and that habitually has been an approach that has stifled Arsenal somewhat. So they need to get the zip and the confidence back into their play. But I thought they seemed to take the defeat pretty well. Declan Rice spoke after the game in Portugal and was kind of on the front foot about it and saying they'd said a lot of positive things in the dressing room. I've seen Mikel Arteta a lot angrier after games when they've lost than he was in Porto. So I think they've absorbed it. They know as you said, they've got another chance to get out of jail in the second leg. And so the attention, I think, quickly switches back to the Premier League. But they've got to be on it from minute one.
Mm-hmm. Janusz, is this perhaps a trap game for Arsenal against a Newcastle side unbeaten in its last 5? Or do you look at it that Newcastle have kept one clean sheet in the last 10 and Arsenal are scoring for fun 21 goals in their last half dozen games and expect Arsenal to score loads? What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think I'm with James in terms of Arsenal. I think, if I look at Newcastle on this particular one, unless they get back to basics, which was, let's not forget, the way they defended. We can talk about all we want, the fact that Alexander Isak hasn't been around, Callum Wilson, Joelinton, obviously, Joe Willock, although a couple of them are, possibilities, I suppose, for this game. But if you remember last season, at least for me, one of the main reasons why Newcastle were as good as they were and where they finished was defensively. What's their excuse right now? The back four is there. Okay, Nick Pope, an important part of that defensive unit, is not. But, now for a few weeks, they've put the band together. Last season, what they give up? 33 goals the entire season. That's 41 right now. That is a major issue of balance because I think, with Anthony Gordon and Almiron and Harvey Barnes, I think there's enough there, right? Guimaraes in the midfield. Longstaff's been a very good soldier for them as well. So I don't see an issue with that, but I just think that Arsenal will continue. I think it was one-off with Porto. If I was to say something, because I've seen games from Arsenal like that, is that how important Martinelli and Saka are, and how important to a degree is Lakov Zinchenko, the ability to double up, right? Kivior had a good game, but he's obviously not a left back. Ben White hasn't been the same. And if you saw what Wendell and Galeno did on the left-hand side and João Mario and Conceição on the other, that's as balanced a team as I've seen in terms of attacking Arsenal this season as well. All 4 players on both flanks were absolutely outstanding, and they limited 2 key players. And if I add Odegaard, who really couldn't find them, that was your blueprint for that.
Mm-hmm. James, you spent 3 hours on the motorway coming back from listening to Maurizio Pochettino earlier today. Arsenal players didn't have that, but they did have the same journey back from Portugal that you had. Could fatigue maybe play a part in this one for Arsenal?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it's not, the reason why this game is 8 p.m. UK is because it was originally going to be the early game on the Saturday, but that fixture couldn't take place because Arsenal were playing in the Champions League on the Wednesday. So the earliest time it could be played was to move it back to the Saturday night. So it is a little bit unorthodox in that the sort of Wednesday to Saturday night scheduling is not something that teams habitually tend to deal with. My understanding was I think Arsenal stayed the extra night in Porto and trained on the Thursday over there before flying back. So I think they were kind of conscious of, trying to do their recovery and their warm down there and get that into the legs as soon as they could, rather than flying back overnight, getting back at 2-3 in the morning and then trying to play catch up for the next sort of 48 hours. So. And I think also the training schedule, I think that changed today, which is why Mikel Arteta's press conference was earlier in the morning than it normally is. So they are rejigging things behind the scenes to try and make sure they're right for it. One other thing I would say about this game is that there'll be a bit of needle in this game because this has developed into a little bit of an unexpected rivalry. If you remember this game last season, it finished 0-0, and there was a lot of accusations of time wasting. I think it was going on quite early on in the first half from goal kicks from Newcastle, and there was, from my understanding, there were a few words exchanged between the backroom staffs and even at a higher level than that, and then that obviously fed into the game up at St James's Park when Newcastle beat them 1-0 and they scored that goal, which prompted the formal complaints to PGMOL. About that goal being disallowed, and obviously all of the talk there. So there will be a bit of extra motivation on both sides, which could actually help Arsenal in terms of that quick turnaround.
Yeah, and Newcastle has only lost one of its last 4 against Arsenal previously in recent years. I want to bring in Ryan O'Hanlon now. We're going to move on to Sunday, another game you'll be at, James, the Carabao Cup final between Chelsea and Liverpool. It's a repeat of both the League Cup final and the FA Cup final in 2022. They both finished goalless, and Liverpool won them both on penalties. And Ryan, you've written an article, which we will get to shortly, analysing the 28 players that have been signed since Todd Boehly came in. We'll park that just now, but looking ahead to Sunday, who are favourites? League leaders Liverpool or 10th place Chelsea for you?
I know Jurgen Klopp seemed to suggest that it's a 50-50 game, in which case he would be giving betting advice to the general public that everyone should bet on Chelsea if it's actually a 50-50 game, but obviously Liverpool are the favorites. The injury issues are huge for Liverpool, but a bunch of players were injured the last time these two teams played. Obviously that game was at Anfield, but it was completely dominant performance by Liverpool. So I think Liverpool are obviously the clear favorites, as we could have just realized from looking at the table.
Okay, Janusz, it's Sunday morning ahead of the Cup final, and you've got Mohamed Salah, you've got Darwin Nunez, and maybe Szoboszlai as well. And they're all, I could maybe play here, but it'd be a bit of a risk should you take an injection or something like that. Do you prioritize the Cup final on Sunday morning and the risk it would be, if it would be, to play one or all 3 of those players? Or do you leave it up to the player and hope that they make the right decision? What are you doing here, especially with Mo Salah?
Yeah, I don't think you're leaving it to the player. I mean, that speculation is absolutely crazy. I mean, it's a cup final. It's a chance to win a trophy. So I'm sure if Salah is available, he is going to play. I mean, he doesn't have to do that. We saw against Luton, even though the first half wasn't good. I mean, look, you have an extraordinary manager with players that are willing and capable of doing just about anything for him, right? To make sure that he leads the right way. And it doesn't always happen that way. But I just think we saw, I think it was with Arendo and many players coming out. I think it doesn't matter who comes out there. I think Liverpool are going to be favorites. I think they're going to be favorites for a number of reasons. I mean, being Wembley, I think, I didn't look player by player, but I think there's a little bit of an experience factor in that in that way. That big pitch, I think, is going to serve Liverpool better. It almost doesn't matter. I think at this stage, if Jurgen Klopp, and you saw the reaction of your team without so many players in the second half at home against Luton, right? And improve Luton, by the way, not an easy one to play, which we've seen. I think you're saying to yourself that I could even take a risk and bring some of the big players off the bench. This is how much I trust all these players, and this is how much they'll do it for him. So even with Chelsea looking much, much better, obviously a very good performance against Manchester City, my goodness, they're up against it.
So, Chelsea unbeaten in 3, James, including that draw at City, as Janusz mentioned. Good wins as well in the FA Cup at Aston Villa and against Crystal Palace. But before that, losing at home to Wolves. Which Chelsea do you think you'll see when you go to Wembley for ESPN on Sunday?
Well, I have to say, listening to Pochettino speak today, it was a definite change of tone. He was quite positive, much more positive, almost bullish about his team's chances. He seems to think that they've turned a little bit of a corner, and there's sort of little examples that he's kind of giving, like when Disasi's celebrating a block or a piece of defending. He's sort of suggesting this is an example of, do you see that? Did you see that earlier in the season? Do you see these moments where there's signs of the team starting to come together, of a real genuine team spirit? It feels a little early to be saying that. It's not that long ago when they were losing heavily to Liverpool and then getting beaten badly at home by Wolves, and we were thinking, well, hang on a minute, is Pochettino even going to see out the season here? So, they've put 3 good performances together, most obviously and perhaps impressively, although nobody wins easily at Villa these days, but that draw at Manchester City. And there was a sense of momentum starting to build. And the injury picture, in contrast to Liverpool, it is just starting to settle down a bit. And I think there is perhaps now a chance of Pochettino to actually even train with his first choice 11, which I'm not sure he's really had the opportunity to do until now, let alone pick them and actually play them all together at the same time. So I was surprised. He was a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more confident than maybe I thought. And I think he feels it's going to be a completely different game to the game at Anfield. He seems to think that, even though it's 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks since that game, he seems to feel that the progress that his team have made in that time, in terms of being able to come together and fight as a unit, and the phrase he kept using today was sort of learning how to compete. He seems to feel that they've trying to establish a base level of consistency in their ability to fight in matches that ensures that the kind of insipid displays that we saw at Liverpool and then at home to Wolves are a thing of the past. But 3 games, since then is a bit of progress, but it feels a little premature, I think, to be wholly confident that Chelsea are going to turn up full sail and really take it to Liverpool.
Ryan, the closest Mauricio Pochettino has come to winning silverware in England was against Chelsea when he was Spurs manager in 2015 in the League Cup final. He lost that one narrowly. As James and Janusz have alluded to, and you as well, it's less than a month since they were thumped 4-1 at Anfield. So how does all that turn around? How does Pochettino get his first English trophy against Liverpool less than a month after losing 4-1 at Anfield?
I mean, I think we saw it against City in a lot of ways. And you look at Chelsea's aggregate performance; they're kind of a heavy possession team. They try to play a lot of through balls, a lot of cutbacks. That hasn't really led to much, as you said, that they're in 10th. Against City, they looked really good at times, sitting deeper and countering. So you would think against Liverpool, it's going to be the same thing, right? Everyone Liverpool plays, other than maybe City and Arsenal, they try to pin them in the final third, press, and keep the ball there. So you'd think that there should be some opportunities for Chelsea to hit Liverpool on the counter like they did with City. It's just, I'm a little skeptical that the City game was really any kind of progress. I know that they got a draw. They give up 31 shots, which good teams don't concede 31 shots, no matter how effective the opponent that they're playing against is. So honestly, I think if they play the same way they played against City, if Liverpool have 31 shots in this game, I don't think it's going to end well for Chelsea. But I think the blueprint for Chelsea is the first half, I would say, against Manchester City.
It's funny when you look a bit deeper into a game, you see a scoreline 1-1, but Erling Haaland could easily have had a hat-trick. Some of the ones that he missed were incomprehensible, and that could have been the same scoreline as when Chelsea went to Anfield. Janusz, if Mohamed Salah starts, do you still try and find a place in the starting 11 for Harvey Elliott?
No, he's going to come up bench, no, I mean, no chance. I mean, the midfield, I think, picks itself the way we know it with Endo, McAllister, and Gravenberg, who's outstanding. Look, and you guys alluded to it. I mean, remember, for me, that's important as a player, the big pitch, right? I mean, and Ryan is right, the amount of shots. And remember, in that game, it was 1-1. I thought the substitutions in the second half were poor, with Palmer and Sterling leaving the pitch. And, I mentioned after that game that if the game was 5 minutes longer, City would have won the game anyway, right? I mean, here, if it's 1-1, we're going to go to extra time. And the pressing of Liverpool, I don't know if Chelsea can compete with that for a long period of time. So unless they go ahead and well ahead and catch Liverpool off guard, I just think that keeping up with this team, who not only gets better in the second half, but gets better towards the end of the game, and energy-wise, I think experience-wise, is still ahead of Chelsea. That is an issue for me, because transitionally, Chelsea are still poor. And in that game, you could see it. Yes, they caught Manchester City on the counter. They played very, very wide, which I expect that they're going to do the same against Liverpool. And Liverpool will give them those opportunities, not just because of the high line, but because of the commitment there. But I just don't know if this Chelsea team has shown me that they can sustain that for 90 minutes and plus. And that is what it's going to take, regardless of what Liverpool team takes the pitch. And if it's, say, Darwin Núñez and Salah coming off the bench at some point in the second half, that's even worse for Chelsea. Big steps, Ryan, and we'll talk about Chelsea a little bit later, but, far from a finished product, although things are looking good. And I don't think this is going to be the game we saw at Anfield between these two teams just a couple of weeks ago.
James, we don't have to go back too far to find goalkeeping substitutions before penalty shootouts. I don't think that'll happen this time, but goalkeepers for Chelsea are still on vogue right now. Did Pochettino give anything away when you spoke to him earlier about whether or not it's going to be Petrovic or Sanchez between the pipes?
No, he said that 99% knows his team, but he hasn't told the players, so he's not going to tell us first. So we didn't really get too much info on that front. I mean, from speaking to other people, I don't think Robert Sanchez is going to be ready to start the game. I think it probably will be Petrovic, and that just exacerbates. Not that I don't think he's a fairly solid goalkeeper, but that does exacerbate your concerns about them defensively, really, because Thiago Silva's touch and go. They're giving him a chance to recover from a groin injury, but I think that's very much 50-50, and it sounds like even if he does play, it would be something of a gamble. Obviously, if he's not there, when you've already not got Reece James, Fofana, obviously a long-term injury, Badiashile, Cucurella, they're weak at the back, and you do look at that Liverpool forward line with Salah back, and presuming that he starts, and I'm pretty sure he will. And it's difficult to see them being able to keep Liverpool out. Then you think about, as the guys have said, they gave up a lot of chances against City, and although Núñez is making something of a habit of missing quite a lot of chances, you just sort of can't really see them getting away with just conceding the one goal if they're that porous at the back again. So, yeah, we don't know exactly how they're going to approach it, but I think Klopp is playing, as Pochettino says, a bit of a clever game in trying to play it down. But I mean, Liverpool, I think, are very strong favourites going into this. You'd expect. I think where Pochettino is coming from is he's trying to say that there's a basic level of commitment and desire and hunger to want to do well. Now that is pretty entry level for an elite level football team. Let's be honest. But Chelsea have fallen quite short of that. So I think he feels that there's some progress in terms of their application, but are they just on a individual level and as a collective team performance capable of shutting Liverpool out for 90 minutes and winning the game? Well, theoretically yes, but you feel like they're up against it at Wembley.
Before we let you go, what's your prediction for Sunday, James?
Well, having said what I've just said, I'll go for a Chelsea win. No, I won't. I think Liverpool will win it, and I don't think they'll roll them over. But it's difficult. It's difficult to see Chelsea. I think if they take it to extra time, they've done well. So I think I'm going to go 2-1 Liverpool.
Okay, Janusz?
Yeah, I just think, again, that story with Klopp is very important. It would have been the same if he was staying on. He has an exceptional way of getting so much out of every player over the years. It's incredible. I can't think of another manager other than Pep that's capable of doing that. Poch is not at that level just yet. We were impatient with Chelsea. That's why I want to give him credit. They were an easy target to some degree, and we've been waiting for them to turn that a little bit of a corner. But I just think that Liverpool are way too much for Chelsea at this stage.
Okay, Ryan?
Yeah, if Nunez and Salah don't play, that's their three best goal scorers not playing. So it might be a little bit of an issue turning those chances into goals, or it might be a little bit of a struggle. But yeah, I'm with James. I think 2-1 sounds right to me.
Okay, thank you to James. We'll stick with Janusz and Ryan. But a reminder, if you're in the United States, you can watch the Carabao Cup final on Sunday exclusively on ESPN+. Kickoff at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 a.m. out west. And the pre-game show from ESPN FC begins at 9 Eastern. That's Sunday. Let's get back to the present. And since the summer of 2022, Todd Boehly, well, he's added a lot of players to the Chelsea squad, or he's facilitated the adding of a lot of players to the Chelsea squad. 1.1 billion has been spent to get 28 players in. Now, our little graphic here, we will have 18 of the ones that are at Stamford Bridge right now. But Janusz and Ryan have to decide, do they fall into one of four categories? Great move, holding out hope, not looking good, or a mistake. And this is on the back, Ryan, of an article that you have written. Just explain a little bit about that article.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially what we're doing here. The premise was that Todd Boehly, the new ownership, took over when Chelsea were in a pretty good phase, right? They won the Champions League the year before. They weren't as good as City and Liverpool, but they were one of the other best teams in the world. They were somewhat unfortunate maybe to not beat Real Madrid in the Champions League. They were just one of the best teams in the world. And then the new ownership's mentality was, we don't care. We have to completely revamp this team. They have completely revamped this team. Thiago Silva will really be the only player on the field on Sunday that was a part of the previous great Chelsea team. So what have they actually gotten from this was kind of my idea. And, as you alluded to earlier, they got 10th place out of it so far.
It's like a Zoom meeting with these graphics and this layer, just expecting a dog or a cat to appear in the background of either Janusz or Ryan. So let's get started with this one. Ryan, I'll give you the American goalkeeper the goalkeeper who was at New England Revolution, Georgia Petrovic, to begin with. Which of the four? We'll take it alternately. So there's 18, you get 9 each. You can start, Ryan, with the former Revs goalkeeper. Which topic and which category are you putting Petrovic in?
I'm going to actually put him in not looking good. He was probably the best shot stopper MLS has ever seen. He's been okay at Chelsea. I think he's been maybe a little below average when it comes to shot stopping. He's become the starter, I guess the de facto starter recently. But yeah, his performance hasn't been the kind where you see him between the pipes and you go, okay, this is our keeper for the next 15 years.
Janusz, what are you doing with Robert Sanchez?
Oh, I was a little bit surprised. I think Petrovic has done well. I mean, good at penalties, saved one. I think he may come in handy in the final. But I think for a player to come in and not expected to see the pitch for a long, long time, I think he's challenging Robert Sanchez right now. Obviously, I mean, he's not there yet. But I would say already it's a great move because they can't lose on that, given the money that they spent for him. Holding out hope maybe, but to say he's not looking good, that's a bit of a stretch, I think, for me. So they'll duke it out. Ultimately, Robert Sanchez may be the number one, but I would probably put Robert Sanchez in that category that Ryan put in at first before Petrovic.
Okay, so you each get your choice. You cannot argue as far as where the player is put by the other person, although, as Janusz has done, you can put a case as to why you think it might not be in the right place. For Malo Gusto, Ryan, 30 million was spent to get him from Lyon. Where does he go in your categories?
I think this is one of the few great moves. I might change the category to solid moves, good moves, rather than great. But that's our most positive category. They needed a backup to Reece James because Reece James is always injured. Gusto's incredibly young. He's played basically every minute since Reece James got hurt, and I think he's played reasonably well, wasn't super expensive, could be on the team for the next decade, and it wouldn't surprise me.
Wesley Fofana, Janusz, 80 million, a lot of money. Where does he go?
Well, I mean, if it's not for injuries, I'm gonna say holding out hope because I think he's a very good center back. Where did he come from? Leicester. I mean, he was tremendous. The moment he came in, he got injured. Right when he came back, it was indifferent a little bit. So I mean, because he's so injury prone, that's where I have to put him. If he's healthy, I still think he's one of those that challenges for the starting spot. So let's just put him there. I haven't given up on him.
38 million for Badiashile from Monaco, Ryan. There's 4 categories. He's only allowed to go in one. Which one?
Let's throw him in holding out hope too. He's played about a third of the minutes since joining the team, which isn't necessarily what you want from your center backs, especially when one of your other center backs is a 39-year-old who doesn't seem to be a part of the club's long-term plans, obviously. But he's quite young, especially center backs tend to peak a little later. So I don't think we can write Badiashile off.
Janusz, if 65 million for Cucurella isn't a mistake, then why should he be in any of the other 3 categories?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, I mean, from time to time, he still comes up with a game. But when you spend that kind of money and you have this sort of competition, because let's be honest, I mean, if you look at on that, left-hand side, Chilwell is an excellent player. He's had injuries, but, you already see the quality he has got. And, I know Cucurella play on the right-hand side, but we just talked about Malo Gusto, who's absolutely outstanding. And I agree with you, Ryan. I would put him in a great move if there was a category there, because he may play ahead of Reece James when it's all said and done. Then you see Cucurella. Where do you put him there? So, I hate the mistake, but I mean, for that kind of money, you almost have to put him there, don't you?
Last week against Manchester City, for a long spell in that game, I thought Disasi was absolutely outstanding. Now, he's had his moments, Ryan. 45 million from Monaco. Overall, what have you made of him?
Yeah, as I said earlier, would I categorize it specifically as a great move? Maybe not, but good move. So let's throw him in great move. He's played more minutes or a higher percentage of the minutes than any other player signed in the Boehly era. And for a move to be good, you need your players to play. I know maybe that's a little bit of a low bar for these, but he's been a pretty much play every game starter since they signed him. So compared to everything else, it's certainly a positive.
On to the midfielders now. Carney Chukwuemeka. If we had an hour, I would love to be able to get more in depth with these, but because we don't, we're on to the midfielders, Janusz. Carney Chukwuemeka was only 18 million from Villa. What have you made of him in which category?
Yeah, I mean, coming off the bench, he's still very. What's he? 20, something like that. 18? What did you say? How old? I lose. There's so many young players, but I still think that you give him time. I'm holding out hope for him. I think he's a quality player, can change the game coming off the bench, gives you energy. I'm fine with him.
Okay. Ryan, Leslie Ugochukwu. Even better if you pronounce it correctly. Ugochukwu from Rennes, 27 million. Struggled to make that much of an impact. What's he done when he's had the chance?
Yeah, I think I'd throw him in not looking good just so we have a little bit more of a harsh grading system. I think, he's quite young. He could still turn it around, but he was a little more expensive than some of the other players around his same age and just hasn't had any impact at all on Chelsea because he's barely played.
Romeo Lavia, 62 million, Janusz, from Southampton. He's been injured quite a bit as well. So where are you putting him?
I'm holding out hope. I think he's a very good player. There's a reason why so many teams went after him. Liverpool was obviously one of them. He basically hasn't played the entire season, right? I mean, so it's difficult to put him anywhere but in a place where I think that when healthy, when he gets run of play, I think he's a strong player on both sides of the ball. I don't see a problem with that. And not seeing him play, it'd be very harsh to put him anywhere but in that category.
Ryan, you get the second most expensive player that they've signed, Moises Caicedo. What you got?
I'd put him in holding out hope as well. He's played a lot. I think he's been fine. It's probably been oversold just because he is a little clunky in possession, so he has some moments that don't look great. But I think he's been what he was for Brighton. It's just that they made him the second most expensive midfielder ever. You can't convince me that he's the second greatest midfielder to ever play. He's not even close to the second greatest midfielder in the world right now, let alone on his own team. So could he eventually live up to that fee? Possibly, but hasn't even come close to it yet.
Yanis, a little caveat here with both Caicedo and the player that you've got to put in a category, Enzo Fernandez. It wasn't their choice to pay that amount for them. That was the amount that was paid, but it's the millstone around their neck. Well, that's that boy that cost 116. That's that boy that cost 121. So where are you putting Enzo?
Listen, I'm an Enzo fan. Everybody knows that. He's a great move. You can say it's a great move that's too expensive, but that's not his fault or anybody else's, right? I mean, sometimes you have to pay for that. In the process of building a young team that I do believe, I continue to say, will come good in time. I think he's a great player. We see what happens. He's got the experience of being the World Cup winner already. I think when all the other pieces fall into place, that's truly when you're going to see the quality of Enzo Fernandez. Because I have a feeling, because of the fact that he's a World Cup winner and because of the price, people expect way too much. It's almost as if Enzo Fernandez is going to go wide, cross it to himself, and score a goal, right? Even though we know that's not necessarily what he does. But I have a feeling that in a season like this, the expectations were so high. And let's not forget, he's still a very young player that's learning. For me, it's still a great move.
On to the forwards. Ryan, you can start with Raheem Sterling. 56 million from Manchester City. What's he done and where should he go?
We're putting him in a mistake. He's played a bunch. I don't think he is an important player for Chelsea. He just has been nowhere close to as good as he was for City, nowhere close to as productive. And they brought him to the team when he was kind of at the tail end of his prime. I know it's crazy to say that about a 27-year-old, but that's how soccer works. And his production has declined each season. He's going to be in his 30s soon. I think a big reason why Chelsea haven't been as good as we might expect is because their sort of biggest investment, or one of their biggest investments among their attackers, just hasn't produced the way that he had for most of his, frankly, incredible Premier League career.
Yanis, let's go back to last January, 2023's transfer window, and Mikhailo Mudryk was nearly an Arsenal player, but in the end, he went to Chelsea, so they got Trossard. Mudryk, what about him?
Well, he's a mistake, obviously. You have to wonder about his mentality as well. I mean, first and foremost, I feel for him because by the sounds, he himself didn't want to go to Chelsea. He wanted to go to Arsenal, and obviously it didn't happen for him. He's gotten many opportunities right now, perhaps too early on a team that's not performing well. That's never easy. So I look at him and just wonder, I mean, when is the time that he's going to come good? And is he going to continue to even get those opportunities? It seems to me that, at Chelsea, although they won't admit it, I think Pochettino kind of sees now that he's probably not going to get the time that he felt. And given the amount of money that was spent on him, you have to do something with a player like that. You're almost forced to move him. So unfortunately, it's a mistake, but one that could have been foreseen by Chelsea. So I don't feel bad for them.
Okay, 4 to go. Ryan, Nkunku, 60 million from RB Leipzig. Where's he going?
We're going to put him in not looking good also. Obviously, he's been injured for most of the season. He was incredible for RB Leipzig, but we do know that there's a recent history of players struggling to make the transition, especially attacking players from the Bundesliga to the Premier League. And also, he's just barely played this year. And as much as we can look to the future with these players, this is a year of Christopher Nkunku being on Chelsea where he's done nothing. So that, you don't get that back. So I think my expectations for him are lower, I guess, than what they were when they signed him.
I think your expectations and your grading is certainly harsher than it was just 10 minutes ago when we started that, because I'm sure there'd be some that would hold out hope for Christopher Nkunku, given his injury history. However, the grading system, you've got him in not looking good. Yanis, Noni Madueke, 35 million from PSV.
Holding out hope. I like him. I've liked him from the beginning. There's certain Marquez that introduces very good one-on-one, can play on both flanks, and again, you have to go back to the inconsistency. I think once there's stability, once there's a clear lineup. When I say clear lineup, your key players, maybe the 8 key players. This is a player that's going to either from the start or from the bench give you that something extra special. So I've been okay with him. Early in the season, I saw the things that I wanted to see. Then I gave up on him just a little bit, but he stayed the course. I think he's good enough to be there.
2 to go. Nicholas Jackson, I've commentated on him plenty times at Villarreal. He wasn't really played as a striker. He was played coming in off the left-hand side, but obviously with Nkunku out hurt, he has played as a striker quite a bit, Ryan. How's he done?
Yeah, this might surprise some people. I'm putting him in great move. He obviously has missed a ton of high-profile chances, but to me, a striker missing chances is a striker who's eventually going to start scoring goals. I'd much rather have the guy who's missing chances than the one who's not getting them. On top of it, even with all the missed chances, he's at about a goal. He's a little above a goal and assist every other game. He's 23. He costs around 35 million. Every team in the world would pay 35 million for an attacking player that scores or an assists a goal every other game. I think we can get lost in some of the high profile misses and kind of miss sort of what they paid for Jackson, how young he is. And then I think that the fact that he's getting all of the chances speaks to a higher potential of production for him going forward as well.
Okay, interesting grading. Janusz, that's the place, a great move that I thought Cole Palmer would end up, not Nicholas Jackson. Where have you got Cole Palmer?
Yeah, I mean, he looks the part. He's such a young player right now. Physically, still, I think he's going to grow into the game, and obviously a creative player. I kind of compare him just a little bit, not at the same level, but to Martin Odegaard, isn't he? Because he's going to have to. They're going to have creative players. When you look at Caicedo, when you look at Enzo Fernandez, they're more physical type of players, box to box if need be, and of course capable of creativity, especially Enzo Fernandez. But I think, that X factor that Cole Palmer has with that left foot coming inside, able to finish, able to deliver a very good cross. The numbers are absolutely outstanding for a team that's in the 10th place in the league, for a player that just came over. And really, I mean, look at all the big names and the amount of money spent on some of these players. So you have to put him in great move so far. I hope he continues to develop.
Okay, so of the 18 players, of the 28 that have been signed for $1.1 billion, those that are still at Stamford Bridge right now and not away out on loan, we've got 5 of them in great move. We've got 6 that we're holding out hope for. We've got 4 that's not looking good, and we have 3 that are mistakes. My thanks to Janusz Mihalik, to Ryan O'Hanlon, and earlier to James Ollie. Just a reminder, Sunday, the Carabao Cup final on ESPN+. Our coverage begins at 9 o'clock Eastern, with the game kicking off at 10. Should be a good one. They met a couple of years ago. It went all the way to penalties. It's not just that game that's on Sunday. We've got a full slate of fixtures for you this weekend. Barcelona against Getafe. Coverage begins at 9:45 Eastern. From La Liga on Saturday morning, kickoff at 10:15. Later in the day, I'll be joined by Alex Pareja for commentary of Almeria against Atleti down by the coast. That one from 2:30 with kickoff at 3. Also, we've got from the Bundesliga later today, a good one, Bayer Leverkusen against Mainz, 2:30 Eastern, the kickoff time with ESPN FC on from half an hour earlier. And on Saturday, Bayern Munich taking on RB Leipzig. Bayern have hit the skids right now with their form, losing against Lazio, losing last week as well, and the week before against Leverkusen. That's a big one. That's Saturday at 12:30. And on Sunday, back to La Liga, Real Madrid against Sevilla. Kickoff at 3 p.m. Eastern for that one. We would just like to give our best wishes and our thoughts to those affected by the tragic fire in Valencia. Granada against Valencia this weekend has been postponed, as has the Levante game. So our thoughts go out to those who have been affected by that. We've got the Carabao Cup final, we've got La Liga, we've got Bundesliga, and it's Chelsea-Liverpool that highlights the weekend in the Carabao Cup final on Sunday. for now.